it's all anonymous like that. Do you give me permission to record you?
Yeah, of course.
Names are not used. It's just that sort of thing. I'm going to ask you 3 things. Just your story. 1, your background, how you get into this stuff, and why. Your thoughts on retention and who leaves, who doesn't leave, and your thoughts. I'm keen on your thoughts on teaching too.
Sure. Yeah.
Fair deal?
Yeah, that's fair. It's awesome.
I appreciate this, Josh.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries.
How'd you get into this stuff?
How did I get into it? Well, when I think back to when I was a kid, I think I was a pretty normal kid. I was into sports, really into hockey and soccer when I was growing up. Martial arts and jiu-jitsu and all that type of stuff probably didn't really occur to me until I was a teenager. So, I was born in 1990, so when I start to think about when I got interested into martial arts, like I was interested into pro wrestling, like when I was a kid and when I was real young.
Cool.
My parents used to tell me that they would use a wrestling VHS as a babysitter. I would just sit in front of the TV and just be mesmerized by pro wrestling. So I think that's kind of how I got interested in I don't know, performing in like crowds and like all that kind of stuff. And then I was into playing hockey, so I was athletic. And then a lot of people don't know, but I was actually pretty out of shape and overweight when I was a teenager. Like at one point, I'm like 160 pounds now, but I was over 200 pounds, like probably close to 210 when I was 16. I have a picture I can show you later on my first driver's license photo, and you wouldn't even think it was the same person. And so I would have been 15, 16 around that time, and it was this first season of The Ultimate Fighter. I don't know if you remember that time. It was like Chuck Liddell, Randy Couture. Yeah. So that was like kind of that era of the UFC. So like that was like kind of coming on after wrestling, and I was to the age where it was like I knew wrestling was like kind of fake and just like a more of a show. So then I saw, okay, well there's this UFC, and I kind of got interested in that, and it was almost kind of like wrestling that you could kind of follow each guy, and they had their own little career and their own little like trademarks and whatnot, especially Chuck Liddell. I'm sure you know Chuck Liddell. He had his own thing. He had the mohawk, and he was just really cool. Randy Couture was his own character. So I started to really get into UFC. At this point, I was 15, 16. I was in high school. I just got my first job actually working at Subway when I was overweight. And I didn't want to start jiu-jitsu or start martial arts, and I didn't even really know what I wanted to do, but I just knew that I wanted to get in better shape, and then I wanted to try like a martial art. I was like, I'll get in shape first and then I'll try something. So I just started reading like a lot of men's health magazines, and I was working at Subway, so I feel like I got like I was eating better just from being at work and stuff. So, and people were noticing and saying like, geez, you lost weight, and all my clothes were shrinking and whatnot. So I got to the point, I'd probably done this for like a year, and I was real dedicated to this. And I remember I wrote down my weight like every week. I just wanted to be just even like a 0.1 of a pound less than what I was the previous week. So I got into this for like a few months, and before I knew it, I was like weighed a lot less than I thought. And when I was 200 pounds, I thought like maybe I'll lose 20 pounds and then I'll be in shape. And it would be weird to think of myself as like 180 pounds now because I'm like 160. So I think I didn't even realize what my true weight or like potential was. So anyways, I got to the point where I was like, okay, I want to try a martial art. But this was 2006. 2007 was when I did my first class. So I spent a lot of time researching because I was like, what martial art am I going to do? Because I didn't want to... I knew MMA was its own thing. You had to do multiple arts. So I was like, I just want to start with one thing. And I don't know if you would remember the fighter Caro Parisian. He fought Diego Sanchez. He was a judo guy. Yeah. And he had some.
I'm a judo guy from a long
Yeah,
time
so
ago.
he had some.
I remember he was good.
Yeah, he had some wicked judo throws, and I remember watching Caro Parisian versus Diego Sanchez, and I was like, man, it'd be cool to do judo. Like that'd be awesome, just to be able to throw somebody. He had some crazy moves I'd never seen. So back then, I was looking in the yellow pages to try to find somewhere to do judo, but there was either no clubs around or they didn't have them advertised, because it was like the closest club I could find was Bridgewater, and I was living in Fall River at the time, so it wasn't realistic to travel. It would have been hours and hours of driving. But they had jiu-jitsu at a couple different clubs, and one was like a jiu-jitsu and taekwondo. I wasn't really sure about that place. And then they had Fit Plus and Titans, which were, I knew them as like MMA schools, and they had a couple fighters at the time. TJ Grant was fighting for Fit Plus, and Roger Hollett would have been the big star for Titans at the time. Yeah, so I got a couple. First, my dad took me in, and we just checked it out. And I still remember going in and checking it out for the first time. There was like a Muay Thai class going on, and it felt like a scene from Rocky when you go in and they're just all hitting the heavy bags, and it just feels super intense. So I think
Titans or football?
This was at Titans. Yeah. So we just kind of went and like stood in the doorway for a few seconds, and I think I was just nervous and scared. So I was like, "Yeah, it looks good," and then I was just ready to leave. I was like, "I'll come back and try a class," but I didn't want to go by myself. So I was in high school at the time, so I convinced a few of my buddies to come and do it with me, because I still feel like if you're trying something brand new, it's easier if you do it with a friend or a couple buddies. So I got a guy that was in one of my classes. He was a good buddy of mine. We were the same age. And then another guy that I had worked with, I got a second job at this point, working with my dad. He does cabinetry. Okay. So I was just helping him out, doing some work for him. And there was a guy that he was friends with that he was interested in coming to try the class. So I was like, oh, this is great. I got one of my buddies and then one of my dad's buddies coming to try it. So we went to Titans. We did the first class. I remember the instructor was probably a half hour late. We were just kind of all sitting around.
Peter?
No, this was John Gale. He was teaching the beginner class at this time. So, yeah, we went and did it, and I don't know if I would say I was hooked right away. I was definitely really interested right away, but at this time, the beginner class was twice a week, so I started going to that for the first probably 6 months. I was just going twice a week, and then after 6 months, I finally got a gi, so I was like, okay, I'm into it. But at this time, it was just twice a week beginner class, and my dad's buddy who tried it with us, he went for probably 3 or 4 classes, maybe a month, and then he dropped out. My buddy that was interested in it with me, he lasted a little bit longer. He was another couple classes, and then I think he got ringworm or something, and that was it for him. But at that point, I had already done enough classes that I was like kind of into it, and I had met some people in the class, so I was like, okay, now I feel comfortable here. Steve Grant, I don't know if you would know him. He was one of my kind of first training partners. He trained a lot of Fit Plus. He's a black belt now too. He's from Dartmouth.
I was a member of Fit Plus.
Yeah. So then I was kind of into it, and I got my first gi, and then I started getting into the advanced classes. And there's kind of a system to it now. We say, like, you have to have a couple stripes to get to the advanced class, but back then I was just training. I was like, well, maybe someone will just invite me to the advanced class. I don't know how it works. And then eventually one of the guys was like, oh, you should come to the advanced class and check it out. So it's like, okay, I must be getting okay at this. Because we never did any stripes or anything back then, so it was sometimes hard to know if you're progressing, because you just spend so much time losing in the first couple of years. So yeah, so I started going to the advanced classes and kind of made some friends there. John Gale and Josh Wincy were two of my real close buddies when I was a blue belt, purple belt. They were always kind of a belt ahead of me when I was coming up, and they were the same size, so we made great training partners for each other. And like my buddy Chris White, who's a black belt now, he lives over in PEI, and he helps run a club over there. So we had like a great nucleus of smaller guys that were getting real competitive into jiu-jitsu. So I was happy that I found a martial art. And really when I started, my goal was to just to get a black belt in something. I was just like, I just want to be a black belt in something. I think that'd be cool. So that was my goal when I started off. I didn't even know competitions were a thing in jiu-jitsu. I didn't know. I just thought fighting was what you saw in movies at this point, right? I didn't know it was like a tournament unless it was like Street Fighter or Bloodsport or something. So I think I did my first competition match probably close to a year after I'd started training and done my first class, which I think nowadays people do competitions a lot sooner, which is interesting to see. So yeah, I did my first competition probably after a year. I can still remember my first ever match. Buddy got on my back. He had me in the rear naked choke. I somehow got out, got on his back, and then I choked him. Still probably one of my best matches. It was my first white belt match, and I probably had hundreds up until this point, but it was definitely intense. And I think where I grew up playing hockey and soccer, like I was used to crowds and people cheering for me, and like I can remember my grandparents and my grandpa like cheering real loud for me in hockey, like kind of funny, almost kind of embarrassing at the time, but it was just like I think it just kind of gave me confidence. So like when I was going to compete, it was kind of like almost I'd already been there before, not quite that intense level of competition, because martial arts is different from a team sport where it's one-on-one. There's still moments in a team sport where everybody's watching you when you have the ball or you have the puck or whatever, but it's a little bit different where it's just like, okay, it's a match, it's you against another person. It's just it's more intense. So yeah, I did that, and I made it to the finals of my first tournament and lost, but I would say I definitely had the bug for tournaments after that, and I wanted to do it, and I was only 17 at that time, so I was young. So I was real interested to get after it and do competitions, and I was with the right group of people that they wanted to compete too. So Fit Plus used to put on a yearly tournament back then. That was the second tournament I ever did. I had some really awesome matches there. I remember I had it was like a 5 minutes, and then if it was no points, it'd go to overtime. So I went against Tristan Johnson, he was one of the mainstays for Fit Plus. And I think we had like a 15-minute match or something. This is when we were white belts. It was crazy. And he beat me in that one. But again, I feel like sometimes losses can show more character than wins, and it just gives you something to work for and work harder. Like, not to say if I would have won that match I wouldn't be training now, but I think it just made me work harder. I was like, I lost, I want to get that one back, I just kept having things like that I just kept working, kept training. So I got really into local competitions, and I got to the point where I was like a really good white belt, and I got my blue belt. But actually, before I got my blue belt, I went to my first kind of national or international competition, which would have been the Abu Dhabi trials in Montreal. So this is fast forward, say this is 2009. So 2007, I would have started training. 2008, I started to get into tournaments. So 2009, went to the first kind of major tournament, which was the Abu Dhabi trials in Montreal. So it would have been me, John Gale, and I don't know if do you know Kyle Sanford?
Yeah,
He's
Plus.
No, well, Kyle's a Titans, taller guy.
Maybe I'm thinking of a different guy. Anyway.
He's a black belt now, but he would have been a Taekwondo guy with Kevin Taylor. Him, Kevin, and Peter would have been like kind of the original Titans crew. Yeah, so Kyle went with us to the Montreal tournament, and it was really fun. And to me, I looked up to Kyle back then. He was a brown belt, I was a blue belt, John was a blue belt, but it was cool. We had a lot of fun with that tournament, and Kyle's a really cool, chill guy, and I think it was really valuable for me in that it was like, oh, it's not all super serious. Like, we spent more time kind of laughing and joking around, and Kyle telling stories about his MMA career and jiu-jitsu. And to me, it was just really fun. I thought that it was going to be a little bit more intense. And some of the tournament was intense, and like I value that experience too in that competition. But I was like, okay, I see how like these bigger tournaments, like it's not just all nerves. Like, you know, I'm a pretty easygoing guy too, so I think being around Kyle and John is a little bit more intense, but he was a really good coach for me and a good teammate at the time. So I did all right with that one. I think I got a bronze in the white and blue belt division. But I had confidence that I was like, okay, I feel like I did okay. I think I beat a blue belt in that tournament, and I was still a white belt at the time. So I was like, okay, I did all right. Kyle got a silver. John did pretty good. And then after that, we went to the Pan Ams, which was in California. It was in Carson. So that was 2009. So I did featherweight, which is under 154 with the gi on. And this was like my first official major tournament. This was IBJJF, the Pan Ams. It was a huge deal to us because it was like we knew all the big superstars to us were going to be there. Crone Gracie was going to be competing. Hickson Gracie was going to be coaching them. That was super cool. Cobrinha was one of our heroes. We knew he was going to be competing. It was like it'd be like going to the NHL All-Star game or the NBA All-Star game. You get to like see everybody and kind of be elbow to elbow with everyone. You don't usually get to do that. And I didn't really know, because competing around Nova Scotia is one thing. You kind of get to know everybody, and you know who the better guys are around here. You know who you're probably going to go against. But especially back then, like when I was traveling to compete, it's like you don't really know who else is going to go to California. It's like, I don't know, maybe a bunch of white belts from Brazil are going to come up and beat the crap out of me. I don't know. But I knew that I had like skills, and I knew I trained hard, and I knew one good thing in jiu-jitsu, a lot of the times when you're a beginner, you lose a lot, but you get used to losing, and you get used to going against better people. So I think when you actually go against someone your own level, you have a certain confidence in that. You're almost kind of like, well, what can this guy do to me? You know, I go against purple belts or brown belts all the time, and you know, I do okay. So I think I kind of had that type of mentality, and I was still quite good. So I went, and I think I had 6 matches total, and I won my division. And it was pretty crazy. Like I didn't really expect to win. I didn't think I was going to lose either, but you know, you just don't really know what's going to happen. There were 6 matches. I probably had, I don't know, maybe 50 people in my division. Like it was pretty intense, but it was a lot of fun. And so I got a good taste for competition. And back then, the Worlds, it still is like the big thing in jiu-jitsu. Everybody wants to win the Worlds, right? If you're a young guy starting out, or all these young hungry blue belts, they want to be able to put world champion in their bio or in their Instagram or whatever, right? So me and John and Josh Winsty at the time were all young guys. Like, so now I'm 19. I just got my blue belt, so I'm like, well, I want to go do the Worlds. I think that'd be awesome, right? and I had so I'm still a white belt. This is Pan Am's was March 2009. Worlds is always in June. So June 2009, we were like, all right, let's do it, let's go. So me, John, and Josh Wincy all went to Worlds. I was a white belt, and they were blue belts. I think John went 1-1. Wincy went 1-1. I made it to the quarterfinals. So the way that it works with Jiu-Jitsu, if you make it to the semifinals, you're guaranteed a medal because there's always 2 third place. So everybody wants to get, obviously everyone wants to win, but everyone really wants to get on the podium. So then if you make it to the semifinals, it's almost like a little bit of a relief because it's like, okay, you know you're going to get on the podium. So that was my goal. It's like I want to try to medal. And I lost to this guy, Jacob Sandoval, he's really good. He's a black belt now too, and he trains, I think, at a Cabrinha's gym. So he beat me in the quarterfinals, and it was a really close match. But I was hungry because I was 1 win away from being in the medal round, of the World Championship. So I was really close. So then that gave me enough fuel to be like, okay, next year I'm going to come back and I'm going to win. Like, this is my goal now. I'm going to try to win the Worlds. I'm going to do it. So just spent the rest of the year training hard. So I got my blue belt after that Worlds in 2009. So then I wanted to do a couple other tournaments, so I went and did the Miami Open with my buddy Scott Rose. He was a blue belt at the time, and we knew Jake McKenzie, so that was our connection to go down there. We actually stayed in the gym. So Jake was a part of Fight Sports. So me and Scott Rose, we actually slept in the gym at Fight Sports. This is Cyborg's gym. Cyborg's one of the he's like the number 2 pound for pound, I think, behind Gordon Ryan, right? So yeah, we wasn't quite as famous back then. He was still just as nice a guy. He was like, oh yeah, no, you guys can stay. He wouldn't take any money from us or nothing. They had a little apartment at the back of the gym. So there was a couple guys that lived there, and then they had a couple just mattresses just for guys like us that wanted to crash for just a night or two. So they let us stay there. There was one of the guys was Brazilian, didn't even speak any English. We were just trying to get along best that we could with them. But it was a lot of fun, and me and Scott closed out the bracket for that one, so we made it to the finals, and we didn't fight each other. We just took the gold and the silver. So it was a lot of fun, and I feel like I had some momentum going. I was like, okay, I won the Miami Open. I feel like that was my first one at blue belt, and so going in, I was like, oh, like I'm a blue belt now. These guys are probably going to be a lot tougher. So I felt like I stepped up my training a little bit. I got into a little bit of like physical conditioning. I think there were some CrossFit classes out of Titans at the time, so I got into that a little bit. So I won the Miami Open. I felt really good. I was still doing local tournaments and competing against a lot of local guys and doing well with that. I didn't do that was the only time I did the Pan Ams was at white belt because I was paying for these tournaments myself, so it was, pricey going to California and stuff, but that was the goal. So then fast forward to 2009, I did the Worlds as a blue belt, and it's funny how things work out sometimes because I fought the same guy in the same round, Jacob Sandoval, that beat me in the quarterfinals for the white belt, and then he went on, I think, to lose in the finals. So I somehow ended up facing the same guy the next year, and it was the same round, so the quarterfinals again. And I just remember thinking, like, I can't lose to this guy the same round 2 years in a row. It's like, no way. So he beat me the first year by points, and this time I did really good. I got him by a bow and arrow choke, and like inside the first 2 minutes, like I was really on my game for that one. Made it to the semifinals, so I like was in the semifinals. If I would have won, I would have went to the finals of the Worlds for that one. But I lost to this guy Issa Abel, who's a black belt now. He's really, really good. I think he might have competed in ADCC. He's done pretty much all the best major tournaments. It was a really close points match. I was definitely crushed that I took third, but I know, like looking back now, I know I did really well. But that was my first year at blue belt, so I wanted to go back and do it again. So, because yes, that was still the goal, to do it at blue belt. So I was still competing, still training. The Abu Dhabi Pro Trials came up again in Montreal. I had a really cool experience where I was doing it, and Ryan Hall was there because he was starting to get into TriStar, and he trained there. So that was cool. And Ryan was friends with Jake, so I made a good connection. I got to know Ryan Hall because Jake introduced me to him. We got to be friends. At this Abu Dhabi Pro Trials in 2010, when I was a blue belt, I think I had like 10 matches. I think I had 5 for my division and 5 for the open weight. And for the Abu Dhabi Pro Trials, if you won the open weight, you'd win a trip to go to Abu Dhabi and compete in like a bigger tournament. They had these qualifiers. They had one in Montreal. They had a couple in Brazil. They'd have a couple all over. And it was really fun because it's close enough. Montreal's close enough that you can get some teammates to go. Like if the tournament's in California, it's pretty much you and one other guy that are going probably. So Montreal, there's a couple times where we had 7 or 8 people from Titans or from the Maritimes go up, and we always had a blast. So in 2010, I got to meet Ryan Hall. The crew wasn't quite as big then. I think it might have just been me and Jake and maybe 1 or 2 other people, but I got to hang out with Ryan a lot, and I lost in the finals. I was in the match to go for the trip, and I lost on points. I came super close, lost on points. But to me, it was still cool. I got a bunch of wicked experience. I met Ryan Hall, and he gave me a lot of great feedback, and he was like, man, you did really good today. So that meant a lot to me. Ryan Hall was a superstar. When I was a white belt or a blue belt, everybody knew who he was when I was coming up. So I was like, oh, thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate it. And we hit it off, and he invited me to go down and train with him at his gym. Because at this time he was heavily into grappling competitions, and he was training for ADCC, and he had just opened his own gym, 50/50 Academy, because he had a split from Lloyd Irvin to a much bigger gym that has a lot of high-level competitors, but Ryan split off to do his own thing. So often when people do that, they kind of struggle to have like high-level training partners, so he invited me to go down, and I was going to St. Mary's back then. I was just a broke student. So he gave me some money to help out with my flight, which I thought was really cool. He let me stay at his house. There was a couple weeks where it was me. I stayed at Ryan Hall's house. It was me, Ryan, his wife Jen, Gianni Grippo, and Val Worthington. I don't know if you would know her, but she's pretty well known in jiu-jitsu. She's really awesome. She's a big academic too. You should look her up. Val Worthington. Yeah. So I love Val. She helped me out a lot. So yeah, it was cool. And Gianni's a really well-known competitor. Anyone that would be listening to this would know who Gianni is. So yeah, it was cool. And I'm sure you've had some of the same experiences where it's just like if you're around someone that's like they're at a high level of like what you want to do, it's just really valuable to observe them and just be like, oh, okay, like I don't do that. I got to add that to my routine. Or like, oh yeah, I do that, and that's like we do that kind of similar. Or I got to add this, or that's what was really valuable for me on that trip. So I really, really got to pick Ryan's brain of like how he kind of set up his training programs and just how he liked to train and at what intensity and who he trained with. And I really learned a lot because he was training for a high-level competition. So in my eyes, I was like, this is what I want to do. So I really learned a lot from that. We made good connections. So then I came back again for the Worlds. This would have been 2011. This is probably one of my best years. And I made it to the finals of the Worlds for Blue Belt. And I think I had 7 matches. The 7th one would have been the final. So this was like a bracket of like 120 people. And it was a lot of fun. It was intense, but I trained super hard and like I was ready for it. And I'd been there before. I made it to the semifinals a couple times. It was just like in my head I was like, this is the time. I know I'm going to do it. And I faced Michael Liera Jr. in the finals, so he's a really well-known black belt now. He's one of the top lightweight competitors of black belt. And I lost to him just on points, but it was a wicked match, and it was close. But the coolest thing about it was Saulo Ribeiro and Sanji Ribeiro were coaching Michael Liera because he was on their team at the time, and he was kind of like their young guy that was going to be the next, really high-level superstar. And he's switched teams since then, and Ryan Hall was coaching me and my buddy John Thomas, who's got a really popular YouTube channel, and he's becoming really well known as an instructor. They were coaching me, so that was really cool. And I'd known Saulo, who he was, since I was a white belt because I'd read some of his books and some of his instructionals, and he was like a Hickson Gracie. He's like a real legend. So that was cool. And I was devastated that I lost because it was like, you work so hard to get there. It's like, to me, that was years of training and competing, and I know I still did awesome, but I was devastated that I didn't win at the time. And I remember I was really upset, just like sitting off on the sidelines. I was crying, and I remember Saulo came up to me after, and was just like pat me on the back, and he's like, oh man, don't be upset. That's not the end. That's just the beginning, or something. He said like that, something real deep like that. He said that was I was like, thanks man, like I appreciate it. So that was cool. And that was the closest I got to winning Worlds, but I was still motivated to do it, and I still love competing. You know, you just get a rush from that like you don't really get from anywhere else. And I love competing locally almost more than internationally because, like, all your friends are there. Sometimes my family can come, so it's different, but it's still really cool. I did the Worlds one other time as a purple belt, and I made it to the semifinals. So I got 2 bronze and a silver from the Worlds. I'm just missing the gold.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
So I ended up that one. Liera won that one too, but I didn't get to go against him that one. I went against Mancher Kura. He's a black belt he got his black belt from Marcelo. I believe he's a part of Unity now. But we had a little bit of a rivalry so we went in that one, semifinals of the Worlds. I lost, so I got the bronze. He ended up getting the silver. Then I went and competed against him at a New York Open. So at this time, this is 2013 now. So now I'm a purple belt. And you know Joel Jacquard, he runs the Halifax BJJ gym with Waylon. So at this point, me and Joel had crossed paths. And Joel's from Yarmouth, so he moved up to Halifax, started training at Titan, so that's how I met Joel. And we were just kind of cut from the same cloth. Like, you know, we enjoyed all the kind of the same stuff, and we were working hard, like competitions. So he was watching me at Worlds, and he was kind of getting motivated to go do competitions too. So we went to New York. This probably would have been the first time he went to New York, if I'm not mistaken, in 2013. So we did the New York Open. Me, him, Waylon, our friend Stefan, Devin, younger guy from Yarmouth. We all went. And I went against Munch again in the finals, and I had a real good. It was probably one of my better runs in a tournament because I beat a couple really good guys. But to me, I was just so motivated to get that rematch. And I was like, I know I can beat this guy. I was like, I got to go to New York and fight him again. That was like the attitude that I had. So, and I did it, and I beat a really tough guy in the semifinal, this guy Zada, who's a really good Alliance black belt. I got him with a bow and arrow choke. But it was a war. I ended up winning that one. And then Munch beat me in the finals. And I still got the video from that one, and I showed it to Joel, I think, a couple months or maybe even a year ago. But I was like, it's crazy, man, because Joel's coaching me, but coaching Munch is Marcelo, and Josh Waitskin was in Munch's corner at that time watching. All of Marcelo's best students were watching. So I would say that was almost kind of the start of Halifax BJJ when I was going against Munch, and me and Joel and all those guys were down there. So it was really cool, but I lost. And me and Munch got to be pretty friendly after that. We were given the medals. He was like, "Oh, you should come by the gym and train. Like, when are you leaving?" And I had flown down there. Joel and the rest of the crew had drove. So I had enough time that I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll come and do a morning class." So I went and did. He actually let me teach part of the class. Like, he let me teach a couple moves, which was cool, but it was just also kind of weird. Like, I'm at Marcelo's school teaching his students. Like, I don't think I should be doing this, but it was a lot of fun, and I got to know Munch, and he was really cool. So that would have been most of my competing through, like, the colored belts was up until purple belt. And then I didn't compete as much through brown belt, had some injuries, and, you know, you just kind of go through some things. I was still training at Titans. I was training a lot there. So yeah, 2013 started doing a little less competitions, but I was still always been like actively training just as hard. So local competitions, they started doing this Submission Series Pro. So I got to compete against some other high-level guys. I got to go against Munch again, but this time was in Glasgow. He got the better of me there too, but at this point I was a brown belt. I got my black belt in 2015. The memory just came up on my Facebook there a little while ago. So I'm pretty sure in the last interview I said 2016, but it was 2015, June, I got my black belt. And that was really cool too. And I think when you get your black belt and like reach a certain level, you just try to think of ways to give back, because jiu-jitsu is a pretty unique thing, and that brings a lot of people together from all different backgrounds and like races, age groups. It's pretty crazy. It's not like any other sport that I've done, like hockey, soccer. Like, it's all really fun, but I don't know what it is about jiu-jitsu. I think it's just like the physical aspect where you're rolling against another person. Like, I feel like I would know more about you from a 5-minute roll than if we maybe even played a whole season of hockey together, right?
Cool. That's neat.
I think. Yeah. So and then Halifax BJJ, Titans. I got to like point where there were some of the people that wanted to kind of do their own thing and split from Titans. was kind of a tough 6 months to like a year period where I wasn't really sure what was going to happen. And something you don't really think about when you start martial arts. You just think like, well, I just want to be a black belt in something. You don't really think you're going to develop all these relationships and have friendships with these people, and then there can be conflicts with other gyms and people's personalities and whatnot. As you know, I'm sure you get a lot of interesting personality clashes in martial arts. And I always thought like their jiu-jitsu had a lot of potential. I always felt like jiu-jitsu had a lot of potential when I was at Titans to get bigger. And I think it's hard sometimes when you do something for so long to think about it as a beginner and like think about it as your first day. But I always say it's almost like the soccer mom approach. Like, try to think if you were coming in here as a soccer mom, you don't know anything about, you don't know what jiu-jitsu is or martial arts or whatever. Do you think you'd actually want to spend more than 5 minutes in this place? That's how I try to think about the gyms that I'm at. So
That's good.
anyways, I really liked Titans. I definitely enjoyed my time there, but I think sometimes you just kind of feel like I felt like kind of all my friends were kind of now part of this other gym, and I was really torn, and I was training at both places for a little while, but I kind of got to the point where it was just like I just got to do what I feel like is right, like in my heart, basically. And I was like, I feel like I just belong with these guys and the crew at Halifax BJJ. And I still love Titans, and it's great, and it's the best place I think you can train if you want to do MMA. And there's lots of great things about it, but I just kind of felt like, I had my time there, and it was awesome, and, it was good. But I started joining Halifax BJJ, and the cool thing about that is it got me into this new aspect of teaching, where it's, for Titans, it was a little bit different, because I was kind of just the guy that would fill in when the instructor was gone. They were like, oh, Presley, like, I'm going to be gone for a week. Can you teach? Yeah, sure. But I don't really feel like I got the like autonomy to run my own classes like I do here. Because in Halifax BJJ, I really feel like I can do whatever I want, and people are cool with it.
Yeah.
It was a little bit different at Titans because it's kind of like, well, this is the way that it's always been. So we always start class in this way, always at this time. So it's like I was running the classes, but it just kind of felt like a little bit. It wasn't really what I wanted, and when I started teaching at Halifax BJJ, it was different because, for one, it was a lot bigger classes. Yeah, okay, so I was talking about teaching. Yeah, so I've really been motivated to get into this teaching, like, ever since I got into Halifax BJJ. It was just different. We had a lot bigger classes, and I think I just got more confident in teaching. And also what really gave me a lot more passion in jiu-jitsu was the past, 3 or 4 years. As you know, there's been, a real, the instructional market has, blown up. When I started jiu-jitsu, you could barely find an armbar on YouTube. It didn't really exist, people showing technique. Because for a long time, and you would know this better than me, but martial arts are almost kind of secretive. You don't want people to know how you do the armbar or how you do the guillotine. That's how we do it. You don't worry about it. So I felt like jiu-jitsu was kind of always a little bit like that, and that if you had a really good move, you weren't just going to put it on YouTube for everybody to, because then everyone's going to know how to do it and then probably know how to defend it, which just people are worried about. But it's different now because of YouTube and the internet, and that the world feels a lot smaller, so people can get into it. Can get into jiu-jitsu now and watch any of the best jiu-jitsu guys. They can watch their entire game because they put it out, they try to sell it on BJJ Fanatics, or they put it out on YouTube, or they put it on their own website, because everyone's kind of realized now there are no secret moves. Everyone just kind of has their own little spin on how they do things. So what's cool for me is that, so now I can kind of pick at all the best guys, who do I want to learn from? Because I got to the point, once I was a brown belt, I was kind of running a lot of the classes that I was in, and my instructors at Titans, they would it was more like we were kind of equals. We were just kind of bouncing ideas off each other. I didn't really have a formal person that I was learning under. I was still learning from the guys from Titans, but it just became a little bit more like we were kind of like a team effort. I didn't have someone that was kind of no, this is what you do, this is what you do. So anyways, I was kind of looking for what am I going to study? So I got to the point where I was okay, I want to start studying again, because I was big into studying matches and techniques when I was a blue belt and purple belt, and then I think when I was a brown belt, got my black belt, I kind of fell off, and I just wasn't interested in the tournament scene as much, maybe because I wasn't competing as much myself anymore, but I just kind of lost interest in it. And not that I lost the passion, but I was probably getting dangerously close to kind of losing the passion. And I needed something to kind of like reignite the fire for me again, since I wasn't competing as much and I was starting to run more classes. I needed some new ideas. So I got really into like John Danaher's style of teaching and his whole like squad of like him, Gary Tonin, Gordon Ryan. To me, these are the best guys that do jiu-jitsu. And it's funny with Danaher because I've watched most of his stuff now. And at first, I can remember almost kind of laughing and joking. I think I messaged Joel or someone else because I don't know if you've ever watched a Danaher instructional, but it's a lot more theory than actual like moves.
I have recently, the past few 6 months.
Yeah. So, which is cool, but to me, like, okay, so when I started jiu-jitsu, instructionals were like 2 minutes on YouTube or whatever, right? It was like quick, to the point, this is how you do it. Marcelo had a bunch of instructionals, but they were like an hour or two in length total. And I can remember like watching Danaher's back instructional and it being like 8 different like files that were all over an hour long. I was almost like upset. I was like, this guy, like, he's just talking about the armbar for 8 hours. Like, who does this guy think he is? But he actually understands it that well, and that he can break it down and tell you what to do, what not to do, how to counter it, and whatnot. So yeah, I remember messaging Joel or someone being like, man, I've watched this for an hour. He still hasn't shown a technique yet. He's just still talking. But it's different, and now I value it, and that it's like, oh, okay, he actually really understands it. And if you listen to what he's saying and you pay attention, it makes a lot of sense. So I started taking notes on all his instructionals, and I would just basically try to base all of my lesson plans off of that. And another guy who I've started listening to a lot recently is John Will. He's an Australian black belt. They call him, he's part of the Dirty Dozen. He was one of the first 12 non-Brazilians to get his black belt. Yeah, he's a real awesome guy too. And he said something in an interview that was basically like, when they were asking about teaching, and he said, when you think about half guard or close guard, like say half guard, and then what do you think the most important move from half guard is if you were going to show someone that's brand new? Say probably the underhook, I guess, or like the knee shield. It's like, okay, that's the most important thing from half guard. What's the second most important thing? Okay, the underhook and getting up towards the back. Well, what's the third most important thing? And then that's kind of how I tried to plan what I'm going to show. It's like there's so many moves in jiu-jitsu. It's literally endless. Like you could do 100 different moves in half guard, and they can all be going in different directions. But it's really important to have a good filter when it comes to jiu-jitsu techniques, I think. And that, okay, you can do all this, but what's the most important stuff, and what are you actually going to use? I've done so many roles and seen so many roles that I feel like I have a good handle on like what the most common situations are and the most common reactions. And it's like, yeah, that works, but this is probably more likely to happen, and you're going to have to know this to get out of this hold, or do this to get on the person's back. So yeah, that gave me a really good framework, and that like, okay, John Will told me how to organize the lesson plan, and Danaher just gives me unlimited material on half guard. He's got 8 hours on every position in jiu-jitsu. So it's fun. It can be tedious, but I just honestly love jiu-jitsu so much, and now more than ever, because I've had friends that have quit at every belt level, which is kind of interesting to me. Often wonder why, because now I know all the moves. It's like it's more fun now than it was when I was a white belt, so I feel like my passion's definitely increased. I can see how it would be different if you're not running the classes, or you're somewhere where you're maybe not enjoying it. But yeah, so I think the teaching has really carried me through to where I am now, and I'm also doing a lot of my own competitions now in-house, which I didn't really think would necessarily be a thing. I did one back at Titans, like a white belt tournament, and everyone really liked it. And in the morning classes, they've been growing and growing, and people seem to enjoy the in-house competitions. And COVID was definitely a factor with that, where they were having a lot of tournaments just around the province, which is great. But then COVID happened, and people couldn't compete, and people want to compete. So I think it gives people a good opportunity. We just did a 8-man tournament yesterday, and we recorded it all, and things are looking real professional. So it's awesome. I feel like I got some good momentum going with what we're doing, and I'm really proud of all my students and Halifax BJJ. And I think jiu-jitsu 3 or 5 years from now, it's going to be even bigger, and yeah, it's cool to think like how much the sport is growing and where it's at. But I'd say that's pretty much me. That's my story. 40 minutes later.
That's a good. You've seen a lot of people come and go.
Yeah.
Why?
Why do people come and go?
Yeah. Why do people leave, and what attracts them to jiu-jitsu? Why do they stay?
It's a good question. Why do people come and go? I think people that stay are kind of like inherently curious, like I am. I think, it's kind of what life is. You got to try to find things that interest you and keep you curious. So for me, martial arts it's really cool. My first experiences with martial arts were, watching martial arts movies with my dad. I think a lot of people get interested in martial arts like that and just kind of wanting to learn something. Self-defense, I think, is a huge aspect with people wanting to learn jiu-jitsu. People, they feel scared sometimes if they're walking home, or maybe they're just not confident in their ability to defend themselves or whatever. So I think that's a huge aspect of it. I think a lot of people want to come try it because they either want to learn how to defend themselves, they want to learn some of what they saw on TV in a UFC match. The UFC's been huge for popularity of jiu-jitsu. I think another one that's super underrated is Joe Rogan. I think people start jiu-jitsu because of Joe Rogan and Jocko Willink too. I know he's a huge motivator. I think more people start jiu-jitsu because of Joe Rogan and Jocko Willink than probably any other reason. I think a lot of people, they listen to that podcast, and Joe Rogan's one of the best ambassadors for jiu-jitsu that I've ever seen. He can put jiu-jitsu into words like I can, and like I haven't heard anybody else. But I remember when I was going to St. Mary's, he had a couple videos that were called "The Benefits of Learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu," and if you go home and watch that video, you'll want to go train right away. Like just the way that he puts it, and the way that he describes what's so good about it. Like, I'm not doing it justice, but if you go watch that video, Benefits of Learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu by Joe Rogan, it's basically just him talking to someone on his podcast that they're not familiar with jiu-jitsu at all, and he basically tells them why it's so good. And I think a lot of people start because of that reason, and why a lot of people drop out. I mean, for one, jiu-jitsu is not for everybody. It's really close contact, it's sweaty, it can be kind of gross. It's something that you got to get over if you're going to be serious about it and you want to learn. And I was talking about this with another friend of mine earlier this week, and I think a lot of it comes down to the environment. Like the environment that you try it out in is huge. Like I said, like the soccer mom perspective. Like if you train jiu-jitsu at our gym and you're doing it as opposed to like training somewhere else in Canada or somewhere else in the world, you could have a totally different experience depending on the gym that you're at. And I think that's unique because if we played hockey growing up, we probably had like a similar experience. Like we played on a couple good teams, couple bad teams. We won some, lost some, whatever. But it's not like jiu-jitsu where it's like your experience can be wildly different if you train at a gym that's more MMA focused. It can be different than if you're training at a gym that's just jiu-jitsu, or maybe it's jiu-jitsu combined with other stuff. But I think it comes down to like the comfort level of your surroundings. A lot of MMA gyms are intimidating, and I think people forget about that. But if you walk into a gym and it's just people hitting heavy bags with their shirts off and, things like that, not saying that's wrong, because it's just what people like to do, and that's fine, but it's just kind of off-putting for some people, and it's intense. Some people, it's just really intense. Brittany, that's helping me do a lot of the filming and stuff now, she doesn't do jiu-jitsu at all, so it's cool to see her perspective on a lot of things. She showed me like a thumbnail, for instance. She's like, yeah, this one, she's like, Chris Kroll's in it drinking a coffee cup, so it makes it way less intense or whatever. So I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't really see it as intense, but I don't have like that beginner eyes anymore, so it's tough. It's tough sometimes, but yeah, comfort's huge. And then also, I think some people getting used to like the physicality of it, I think is something too. Because like if you've never been in a fight, and like I wasn't in a lot of fights when I was like a kid, maybe like a couple like schoolyard wrestling matches or whatever, and we were into just like wrestling around with each other, but like I was never in like many like fist fights or anything. And I think it can be quite intense for someone, especially if it's your first class and you go out there and the instructor's like, okay, roll. just like fight that person or submit them. People are like, well, what do you mean? You know, especially if you haven't ever been in a fight before, or like you haven't watched UFC. When I started training, I watched UFC, so I knew what an armbar was or rear naked choke. Not saying I knew how to do it, but I was at least aware of it. But I think a lot of people that come in, maybe they hadn't seen a UFC fight in their life and they're just trying this out, and the instructor's like, okay, no, you're going to fight this guy, and it's just going to be kind of off-putting for some people. So I really try to really baby the new students in my classes. Like, I just try to get them to kind of sit out and watch the first couple rounds. If they're comfortable, I try to put them with someone that's a little bit more experienced, so they're not going to be totally shell-shocked and they're not going to feel like they're fighting for their life. So yeah, I think who your instructor is matters, where you train matters. It's all going to contribute to your experience, good or bad. It breaks my heart sometimes when you see people quit, because you know, like, there's so much potential, like, for people in jiu-jitsu. But yeah, and I think I think that's the biggest thing. If you're comfortable somewheres, you're going to want to go. You're going to want to be a part of the team. I mean, we got a great club, so I think that's a big factor. People love seeing each other, and they're comfortable there, and, you know, they know they can be themselves and hang out, and it's fun. But if you're not comfortable, if I think back to when I first started, like I said, I brought a couple of my friends with me that I knew because it made me more comfortable. Like back then I was 16, 17. I wasn't comfortable to go to an MMA gym by myself and just walk in and be like, oh, I want to try the class. Like, to me, that was awkward. So I can see how it's awkward for people in the same situation, young people coming in. There's a lot of people in good shape and they're doing athletic stuff in the gym. So it's intimidating, but jiu-jitsu teaches you to kind of get over the fear, and it gives you a good framework, I think, to kind of learn and be comfortable with anything. If you're new at something, that means you're a white belt in it. It takes time, it takes practice, just like jiu-jitsu. So it's good. It's good to try to get over that fear, but I can see how it limits people too, because it's intimidating. So yeah, I think comfort, atmosphere, who your instructor is, where you train, I think those are all factors in why people will either stay or go.
Yeah. How was your teaching evolved?
As my teaching evolved.
Yeah, as far as...
I mean, when I was teaching when I was a blue belt. You were going to say something else?
No, go ahead.
I was teaching when I was a blue belt, and back then it's not as detailed, for sure, and I was pretty brief and to the point. And I always just had I was always a little bit nervous in teaching, because, I mean, I was young back then. I was teaching when I was, like, teaching some classes when I was 19, 20. So you just think sometimes, like, are people going to listen to me? Like, I don't really know. So yeah, I kind of always had that in the back of my mind. And when I was a blue belt, I was like, I'm a blue belt. Maybe I shouldn't be training. Maybe I should be teaching at all. It's a little different now in jiu-jitsu in Nova Scotia. There's a lot of black belts out there and higher level belts that are mostly running classes. But back then, it felt a little bit uncomfortable because I was a blue belt teaching, like, at a good club. But I think as time's gone on, I've just been more confident teaching. And what's really cool is that we record all the classes now. So, and I will oftentimes go back and watch the classes. So that gave me a lot of good feedback for myself, because it's like, well, now I can watch myself teach. So I thought that was really good. And I feel like I'm definitely a perfectionist with jiu-jitsu and teaching, because I can remember when I was really watching myself the first couple times, I was just like, I'm not a very good instructor. It's like, I got to get better at this. So I just tried to just be like a better communicator and just be to the point and slow things down. I think that's something I still got to work on. Slow things down. Try to pick up a lot from Danaher and Gary Tonin and Gordon, and just you got to be really thorough. And I know you know Paul Schreiner. You mentioned him before. He's a really good guy.
Yeah, he's good.
I listened to one of his interviews before, and something that he said that's really stuck with me. They asked him about teaching, and that what do you think makes a good teacher? What compromises that? And he said, above anything else, you owe it to your students to be an expert on the material that you're teaching. So that really kind of stuck with me, in that I'm not going to know everything. It's impossible to know everything in jiu-jitsu, and that's unrealistic. But I know a lot. And when it comes to whatever area it is that I'm teaching, I do a lot of research with jiu-jitsu and techniques and with my teaching, because that really stuck with me. It's I want to really, really know whatever it is that I'm teaching. If I'm teaching half guard, I'm going to look up every half guard resource And even if I don't become a master in it, I'm going to have a pretty good understanding of the main half guard game. So if someone asks me a question, I'll probably have a pretty good understanding. And I'm also, like, I'm not like egotistical or whatever in that, like I'm going to make up an answer either. Like if you ask me something I don't know, I'll be like, well, I'm not really sure. Maybe I'll try it out in the moment and be like, okay, well, I think I would do this, but like let me get back to you. You know, like I'm really open-minded when it comes to jiu-jitsu, and I think that's really important. And that you can kind of get stuck in just doing things the same old way over and over and over for no good reason. It's one of the reasons why I don't like the common warm-ups in jiu-jitsu, because I feel like that's...
ask you about that.
Yeah, okay,
That's something you do very unique.
Yeah.
During classes.
Yeah, so, yeah, for my classes, I don't do the formal warm-ups, and that most jiu-jitsu classes, not all, but most of them, they start out with running circles, doing shrimps, lane drills is what we usually call them. And they usually spend the first 10, 15 minutes of class doing stuff like that. And that's fine, and that can get your heart rate up and get you going. But the more that I started to pay attention to John Danaher, Keenan Cornelius, Faraz Sahabi is someone that I really look up to as a trainer. And I noticed that they said they don't do any of these warm-ups, and I kind of wondered why. And then I heard Faraz Sahabi say in one of his podcast episodes that he put out, and this one really drilled it home for me, and I'm pretty sure at this moment I was like, I got to cut out the warm-ups. I have to. Because he said, think about it in terms of like a year, and that if you spend 15 minutes a day doing these warm-ups and running in circles, so you do that, say you train 4 times a week, so you spend an hour running in circles and doing all these lane drills. If you're a brand new beginner, maybe these lane drills will be useful. You need to know how to shrimp. You need to know how to move your own body. But me and you, and I personally, I think once you get to like not even a blue belt level, once you've trained for like a couple months, you're going to know those movements. You don't need to practice them every single day. If you want to, come do it before class. I'm there plenty early. But I think, like Faraz Sahabi said, say you're just practicing defense. Say you're doing armbar defense. Okay, you can use that armbar defense to warm up 15 minutes a day if you train 4 times a week. So now you have an hour of armbar defense as opposed to, instead of running in circles, just getting your heart rate up. That's valuable time. And I went to train at Keenan's new academy at the time. It was only a month or 2 old. He did the same thing. He didn't do warm-ups at all. He just started out with a technique. So once I got back from that, I had already shortened the warm-ups, and that I cut out the lane drills. And I can remember people being like, well, how come we don't do lane drills anymore? So it's funny when you change things, how people, they notice, right? And like, oh, things are different now. So I was like, yeah, I just don't think they're really useful anymore. And then I got a lot of good feedback, and that like people seem to enjoy, whether it was not doing that type of warm-up or just adding extra technique. And now I just see it's just like I hate wasted time in jiu-jitsu. It always used to kill me when classes would start super late, or people would just kind of be joking around. Like, I think it's important to have fun, but when we're training, I think that's time to train, and we want to get better, because the classes are only an hour and a half. Like, that's not a lot of time. So to me, it was like, no, this time's valuable. Like, I can't in good conscience do these warm-ups anymore because I don't think they're valuable, and I need to, like, I want to give guys the best class that I can. So I was like, okay, now the warm-ups are technique, and I try to just pick a technique that's basic enough that everyone's going to be able to do, and it's something that you need. So it could be, say, like when I was showing half guard, it was like the same half guard sweep every day as a warm-up. It's a little bit different now because I'm doing mount, side control. We have a day where we're doing wrestling, a day where we're doing foot locks. So I try to make it easy enough that it doesn't take a whole lot of brain power to do the first technique. It's still a bit of a warm-up because I think it is, you're just getting there, you're moving your body around. So I try to make it simple enough in that it's a fairly basic, easy technique, but it's a technique. It's not, I don't do the running in circles and all that bridging and shrimping. If people need to know how to do it, I'll go over it with them, but yeah, I just see that as wasted time. And I think I've noticed people enjoy the class more, and I've noticed people get better. Like, I really think it's made a difference in just like the students' skill level, and that we're spending more time doing technique and other people aren't. So like you're gonna gain on people. Like, that time's valuable. If I get an hour a week, 5-6 hours a month doing a particular technique, you're going to become pretty familiar with it. So it really drove it home for me. All the people that I kind of admired, they cut out the warm-ups. To me, it's time to cut out the warm-ups. So I think being open-minded is important in jiu-jitsu. And that may not be the end. Who knows? I may change up classes more in the future. But I think when you hear good advice, you really got to take it, even if it's a shock to the classes and the students. I think you got to be open-minded with jiu-jitsu.
I agree, by the way. It's awesome.
Yeah. No, I think
not
it's
one wasted minute.
Yeah, no, I think it's made a huge difference.
Yeah, not one wasted minute.
Yeah.
Everyone shows up on time because
they know
they don't want to miss anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
15-minute warmers or whatever.
Yeah, and it's been cool, especially like at the start of the year. We started having big classes like January. Maybe it was New Year's resolutions or whatever. But I can remember saying to my wife, it was like, geez, we had like 16, 18 people, and this was big at the time. This is at the start of the year, and it's just been consistently getting bigger and bigger. So other things that I've changed in my classes. So, the school 10th Planet, that's Eddie Bravo's like association, his team.
Yeah, one of the clubs in LA I go to, their 10th Planet is in with them.
Okay.
Jiu-Jitsu and 10th Planet share a location.
Okay.
One of their locations in West LA.
So they're quite unique in their approach, but one thing that they do, and I've seen just through short videos and whatnot, is that they have like an ABCD, like this is what the class is. So you could almost kind of go look at it ahead of time and be like, okay, it's class D tonight. That means we're doing armbar attack, armbar escape. So you could do it like that. And what I like about jiu-jitsu is that like you can kind of do whatever you want, but you do need structure too. Like it can't just be a total free-for-all. No one's going to get better like that. Yeah, I can't remember what I was saying. but structure, 10th Planet. 10th Planet has, you can look at what the class is beforehand. I think people like that. So I do a lot of in-house tournaments now, and I do commentary on the matches. It's really fun for me, and I think it's a good way to good way to give feedback. So one thing I noticed is that people didn't seem like they had a whole lot of wrestling technique or ability, and I just immediately realized it's like because we don't really wrestle. It's like you can't expect people to be good at something they don't practice. So I was like, okay, we need to do a wrestling class. It's like, to me, it's like a pretty easy solution. It's something I've got a lot better at wrestling, just studying good wrestlers the past year or two. So I said, okay, guys, now Monday we're wrestling. Monday's the wrestling class. And I did the same thing with leg locks on Thursday because I noticed,
that's awesome.
Yeah, people were either getting leg locked a lot or they were really scared of leg locks, and I didn't like that because to me leg locks are a part of jiu-jitsu as much as arm bars and chokes and sweeps and takedowns. Like it's something that you need to learn. It was all scary to me when I was starting to learn it. So I feel like I can relate to people and like, no, I know how it feels like when you're learning foot locks, you're scared. But you just got to put the time in. Like we've been doing these like foot lock classes. I was trying to see when I started this, and I think I started in August last year. So like we've already been doing it for almost a year, like what, 8-9 months. So it's crazy. And when I watch some of the classes back now, like I notice people going for footlocks and they're comfortable going for them and they're comfortable defending them. So that's all I want to do. I don't necessarily want to make everyone footlock people and that's all they go for. That can be kind of a rabbit hole in itself. But I think people kind of appreciate, like on Monday morning they have an idea of what the class is going to be, rather than they just, who knows what it's going to be. So I like having a couple days where I can kind of be a little more open and pick what I want to do, but I think it's good to have people know what's on the schedule, they know what's coming up. It's kind of makes it a little bit more digestible for people. But yeah, I think that's been one of my innovations too for classes.
Yeah. That's good. Anything else to add? I guess my last question is, what's your future?
What's the future? I feel like I got a lot of good momentum going with my videos now.
You do? You're going to sell this stuff?
Yeah.
You should.
Yeah, that's the plan in the future. I've been doing a lot of recording.
The videos are really good.
Thanks. I really appreciate that.
Really good.
I really appreciate that.
The last one, the Omoplata one with Harley?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've been getting...
Awesome. I couldn't bother. But you said there's a link to something else?
Yeah, so
I didn't see that.
so we're
You said there's a link somewhere. I
yeah,
couldn't find it anyhow.
yeah. So I've been doing
It's
a lot
really
of.
good.
Thank you. I've been doing a lot of recording. Pretty much been getting in every Sunday morning. Chris Kroll's been helping me out a lot. Brittany Gavin, my wife's cousin Brittany, she's been helping me out a lot. And I think I'm gonna do a website with like a lot of. I'm gonna have kind of like courses, like half guard, close guard, arm bar. Ryan Hall's kind of doing something similar, and that he put out kind of like courses, the modern half guard, modern attacking the back for MMA. So I want to do that, but I want to do it good, and I don't want to rush it and just put out like something that's kind of half-assed. So I'm really going to take my time with it and just try to kind of get like a good quality product that I can give people with a lot of good content. And in the meantime, I'm just going to start to kind of slowly put out, videos of myself teaching more. I got some stuff coming up where I'm going to put out some turtle stuff. I think defense in jiu-jitsu is kind of like a under practice thing. So my next thing you'll see coming up, I got some defensive turtle stuff. So I'm going to put one of those out soon, and then I think I'm going to release the whole like kind of DVD of like defensive turtle. So I'm going to put that one out for free on YouTube, so people can see like, oh, this guy seems alright. He knows what he's talking about. And then I got some other stuff I'm practicing. I got offensive turtle. Right now I'm filming stuff for arm locks. So yeah, that's kind of the plan, is to try to kind of like grow my following on YouTube and Instagram is where I've been posting most. Try to make some good connections with other people. Hopefully down the road we can start traveling again, and I can start doing some more competitions and get to maybe train at some other gyms and travel and learn from some of my friends. So yeah, I think the teaching, I'm definitely not done competing yet, and I still feel like there's a lot of value in that, and I want to do more and whatnot, but I think I'm slowly shifting towards the teaching and kind of giving back with videos, commentaries, and just trying to provide good stuff for people. I think good instruction in jiu-jitsu is really valuable, and I think I have a good handle on it, and I just want to try to provide people with the same experience that I had. And that I know jiu-jitsu, like you said, it can be a real life-changing thing, can give you a lot of confidence. It can change who you are as a person, and just the stuff that you don't even think about. Like the first time I moved out of my parents' house, it was like with guys that I trained with. The building was owned by a guy from the gym. I met my wife through one of my good training partners, like who I lived with at the time. I got jobs through people from the gym. Like I've got repairs done to my house through people from the gym. Like you just don't know, like the people that are going to come to the gym, like the skills that they have. It really is a real community thing, and it's really cool. And I just want to try to, I think jiu-jitsu is a real pay it forward type of mentality, and I just want to try to give people the same experience that I had. Like I said, I think I got some good ideas, some good content, and some good stuff to share with people. I feel like I can relate to a lot of people. So I'm just going to try to keep paying it forward and try to keep the momentum going, and I think there's some good things ahead. Yeah. I feel like for a long time I was just like, I don't know what I want to do. Like, it's just like, I do know what I want to do. It's just jiu-jitsu. That's all.
This is what you'd like.
Yeah, it's what I enjoy doing, and yeah, it's just, to me, like I said, I enjoy it more than ever. And honestly, like, unless my wife works as a nurse, so she's working and she does a lot of back shifts, so she's 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So unless I'm hanging out with my wife and we're watching shows, doing whatever, if she's working, probably guaranteed I'm doing something related to jiu-jitsu. I'm either studying an instructional, I'm watching a class from a previous day, or I'm watching something on like Flow Grappling, or I'm trying to learn something new, or I'm trying to watch a match. And it's like I wouldn't really have it any other way. I feel like now when I watch a movie and it sucks, I'm like, oh, I could have watched 2 hours of matches, like, and that, like, it's fun for me. People probably think it's kind of weird, but I'm, it's just what I love to do, and I think I'm in a groove right now where I'm really enjoying it, and I'm able to give people stuff back. There was a couple years there where I had my black belt, but I wasn't really like producing anything. I was just training. And I still was enjoying it, but you can kind of get lost sometimes, especially you do something for so long. You need something to keep you motivated. Yeah, I think if your heart's in the right spot and you put energy into something, you'll kind of get it back. And I definitely think that's true with some of the people that I've met just making videos and training jiu-jitsu and whatnot. So yeah, the plan is to do more and more jiu-jitsu in the future. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Do you do seminars? Go do seminars elsewhere and stuff?
Yeah, I do. I've done a couple seminars. I've been doing more privates this year than anything. But I did a seminar for Aaron Van Tassel. He's got a gym in Granville Ferry towards Digby Way there. And I've done a number of seminars in Yarmouth, Weymouth area. Never any outside the province. That would be a new one for me. That would be really fun if I could get some seminars. Yeah, I think it would be a good option for me. So, yeah, hopefully once everybody gets vaccinated and COVID kind of becomes a thing of the past, I think that could be a great thing. And yeah, I just want to keep teaching, keep training, and just keep giving people the best thing that I can. It's funny because I feel like the more effort I put into these classes, the more people keep showing up. It's like the harder that I try.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy. We keep breaking
at that hour.
We keep breaking the record for attendance. I think we had 29 this week. That was the record. We had 30 on Thursday. Like it's pretty wild, and it's a really special thing I think that we got at Halifax BJJ. So
only place ever seen that number before work is Garcia's.
Yeah.
At 7 a.m.
Yeah, same.
I bet you're the busiest early morning class in the country.
Yeah, you might be right.
There's
Yeah,
no one else in Canada,
especially right
I
now.
don't think.
Yeah. So it's crazy, and I'm really happy. Yeah, I'm really happy that people value that.
Because of you.
Yeah, no, I'm really proud of that. I think in anything else that I've done in jiu-jitsu, I think this is it. And it's funny, when we started, the morning started with me and Joel just kind of doing our thing, and it was different then because so this is when leg locks were first becoming a big thing in jiu-jitsu. So this is probably 2016, 2017. And me and Joel just used to go in at 6 a.m., 6:30, and we just drill. We drill leg lock escapes. Drill. It wasn't a formal class back then. Because it was a little weird. It wasn't our club, so sometimes you start a class and it's like maybe some people aren't comfortable with it or cool with it. So not that we were hiding it, but it was like it wasn't a formal class on the schedule. We were just trying to get extra training time, because the more that you train in jiu-jitsu, the better you're going to get. So it was like, okay, well, we got to start training in the mornings. So we were just drilling, and a couple more people were coming. And I remember at one point I was like, I don't know if I really want this to be a class, because I kind of like that it was my own thing, But in the end, it's been so much more rewarding, and that it's funny that I didn't want it to be a class a little bit at first, but now it's like I couldn't imagine just going in with just one person and drilling. It would be, I'm sure I would still improve in some aspects, but it's a whole different thing to have people come and train in the mornings. And like you said, I don't think it really happens a lot elsewhere. And that some gyms will have a morning class, but the instructor shows up late or doesn't show up at all, or there's not many people showing up, and people pay attention and they care about that stuff. I always make sure I'm there. I always make sure I'm early. I think there's been one class in my 3 or 4 years teaching the morning class that I think my car battery died and I think I was late, but I'm pretty consistent when it comes to that type of stuff, and I think people value that, and I'm happy that they do. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. Looking back, we probably had 4 or 5 people in the mornings. I mean, you remember when we were at the other gym at our old location, like it was a big class if we had 8 people. Like that was awesome, right?
Yeah.
And now it's like we have 30 people.
One class was you and I.
Yeah.
And you still gave me a class.
Yeah. You wanted to go home. You're like, oh.
You still gave a class.
Yeah. I think that was the only time we had 2 people, was me and you. That's funny. Yeah, and you were like, no, I'll just go home. I was like, are you crazy? We might as well train. We're here. So yeah, and to me, I've always had that attitude. It's like I only need one other person to train with. So I'm still going to get the most. I've always been to make the best out of whatever type of situation that it is. So I'm going to have. It's a lot of fun having 30 people, but to me, I'm going to get the same amount of effort out of myself and the other person if we just have a couple people. If it's just me and you, it's still going to be a good training session. It's just not going to be 30 people. So yeah, I think it's cool to see how much it's changed, and who knows where it's going to go from here. Maybe we'll have 50 people in a couple weeks or a year time.
It's just COVID and you're getting 30 people.
Yeah, it's wild.
Right now.
It's wild, yeah.
Those people don't come because they won't train right now with COVID and stuff.
Yeah, no, we could have more and more people. It's pretty wild. Yeah, so I'm really proud of it.
Anything else to add? I've kept you long enough.
No, I think that's it. It's always interesting to share my story. So thanks for hearing me out.
Cool story.
And Yeah, no, it's been great. Always been a lot of great moments. It was awesome to give you your brown belt recently, you and Chris Bright, and yeah, no, it's just awesome. Like, can't think about how grateful I am when it comes to jiu-jitsu, and I just like I said, I just got to keep paying it forward. That's the best that I can do, I think, for the jiu-jitsu community.
One of the things you do really well, Josh, is you make everyone feel welcome. You pay attention to everybody.
Yeah.
I'm 61. I don't think I'd be doing this stuff if it wasn't for you. I really don't. I've been to the other clubs, and, it's okay sometimes.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, and then you start to get hurt, and you wonder whether maybe it's time that I should stop this stuff. And you make me feel very welcome. And I'm keener now than I ever have been on jiu-jitsu. And that's a testament to you. It really is.
Thank you.
That's an amazing thing, I believe, when someone at my age can feel that enjoy and that motivated because of your teaching.
No,
so that's really something.
Thanks, I appreciate that. No, you're one of my favorite students, bro. And everybody is, but yeah, no. The last kind of story that I'll share here, because it's just all what you've experienced, right? And I've always been like a friendly guy. I'm, naturally a little bit more introverted and kind of quiet, but you got to get out of your comfort zone. But when I went to Keenan's, like I mentioned an hour ago, I had a feeling there that I wasn't really welcome, and I don't mean to put Keenan down or anything, but like I said, it just was kind of my experience. And that his gym was very new, and he's a real popular guy in jiu-jitsu, so maybe he has a lot of people that are kind of in his face all the time. I know he's a lot different than me, but I felt like when I was there, I almost kind of felt like I was annoying him by being there, and that he never came up and said hi to me. He kind of was just always doing his own thing, and just kind of, it seemed like there was a couple people that he was talking to, but to me, I was excited. I was like, oh, I'm at Keenan's gym. I think it would have been a little bit different if I was younger, and I'm already a black belt at this point. So I think Keenan might have looked at it from the perspective of oh, this guy's a black belt. He's just coming here just to kind of get a couple classes at my gym, whatnot. And I think he's kind of more focused on building a team, and that he wanted some lower belts that were hungry young competitors to come be a part of his gym. And that wasn't what I was doing. I was just checking it out. But still, it made me think. I was kind of that's kind of a reason why people leave, is because they come in and they feel like no one talks to them or no one pays any attention to them. And there was another time where I was drilling with one of the girls from Keenan's class, and Keenan was walking around with his cameraman and just kind of filming him helping people out. If you've seen any of Keenan's videos, you know what I'm talking about. But I did the technique, and I noticed him walk by, and I was like, was that it, man? Looking for feedback, was that it? He's just yeah, and then just walked away. So not saying that he was a jerk or an asshole or anything, but it just made me feel, it made me feel a little bit I was oh, it's what you don't do says a lot about what you do too as well. So it's it just made me feel I was I wouldn't want anyone to feel like that in my class. Yeah. So just wrapping up, talking about Keenan's, I didn't feel the most welcome at his gym, so it just made me think, because like I said, I feel like I'm you got to get the best out of the situation type of person. So it made me feel I was I wouldn't want someone in my class to feel like this, because it made me feel uncomfortable, and it made me feel if I could go to any gym in the world, I might not pick that one anymore. And I didn't get to train with Keenan either. I asked him to roll, but he was just done competition a week before. He traveled to Europe and came back, so I get it. Yeah, he didn't have to roll with me, and he didn't. And I asked him to. He's just no, I'm not rolling. I just competed. But it all just made me think okay, well, what if someone came to my gym and I didn't say hi to them, and I didn't want to roll with them, and I didn't pay any attention to them, they would probably feel kind of crappy. So it's just I feel that's valuable. It's it's the little things that count. So when people come into the gym, try to say hi to them, say what's up, try to make them feel welcome. If someone's sitting off by themselves, they're probably the person I'm going to go sit beside and talk to them for a little bit. I try to roll with everybody. I think a lot of gyms, the instructors either don't roll with people, or they have a couple people that they favor, then they roll with. I try to, I think jiu-jitsu is for everybody, so I try to roll with everyone, try to give everybody feedback, and like we said, I think the environment is everything. So when you come in, I want you to feel like you want to be there and like you feel welcome and you know the instructor, and it's a fun, cool vibe. Last point that I'll make, and I think I got this from my parents, especially my dad. When I was growing up, I used to go to like a lot of his hockey games, like just at like the Sackville Arena, like whatever. And they used to let me hang out in the locker room when I was a kid. Like I was probably like 8 or 9 years old. And to me, it was just really cool, like just kind of hanging out with the adults. I think that's kind of why I've always been like more mature and had older friends. But I feel like that's almost kind of like the atmosphere that I try to create at the gym. It's almost kind of like a little bit of a locker room feel in that it's laid back. People can kind of joke around. But when we're training, we take that serious and we train, and then we kind of have fun after. So to me, it's kind of like that all over again from when I was a kid. And like those guys, like they played hockey and like they were good. It was fun to watch, but like when they were off the ice, it was joking around and they were kind of carrying on. Everybody felt welcome. When someone new came in the door, like they were saying hi to them or cheering or whatever. So yeah, I think that's kind of what I try to create with the gym. Just try to make everybody feel welcome.
You do.
Yeah.
You really do.
Thanks. Yeah.
It's very unique.
Yeah.
Thanks, Josh.
All right.
Anything
I
else?
think that's a wrap. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank